Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you a brand new Fire Emblem Heroes video. Now, usually we cover F2P units, their builds, and maybe some discussions on how you could make proper investments, opinions on that sort of thing. But this video has a little bit of a different take on it. And the reason this video is different is because we actually don't talk about 3 or 4 star units at all. And we actually focus strictly on what you see on screen right now, which is the Duo Heroes. Omitted from this list is the Harmonized Heroes, but they will be covered as well. So I'm going to basically talk about Duo Heroes and Harmonized Heroes pretty importantly in this video. Don't think of it as a video for arena scoring, actually. It's not even a video on that or resonant battles, despite their usage in those modes. So with that being said, sit back and enjoy the video. Okay guys, so now we have what I would consider a kind of tier list. Not really a tier list, but I wanted to kind of put this as like a list of heroes you should probably keep your eyes on for potentially picking up if you had the choice to do so or if you were saving for it. So this video is going to cover Aether Raids offense and Aether Raids defense of Duo and Harmonized Heroes and ones you should consider picking up, and essentially like at a 1 copy or potentially +1 copy at most. This is the current list of Duo Heroes and Harmonized Heroes we have in the game. This is just basically a little bit of a ranking with gold, silver, and bronze being like my, I would say, tiers, but realistically how useful they would be to most players. And you can definitely make something like Dual Alm useful as a carry, for example, but or a support, but realistically how useful or how easily is it to use these to slot them into a team for air offense and use them based on that. And at the bottom is a carry kind of thing. A lot of those units, even at like unmerged or +1, are still very powerful, and I'm going to cover those as well. But essentially merges go a long way for the stuff in the carry field. Everything else can kind of act as a carry too if you really wanted to make it work. But essentially, yeah. So unmerged or +1 at best. So it's realistic to try to pick these up and use them in AR offense and AR defense. What you really should be thinking about is, why should I pick them up? And the big thing is it's like it can be kind of a budget option. Realistically, it can be a budget carry option or a very good support unit, especially if you pick them up as like for free or through a spark, like with Christmas Altina. So that's definitely something to consider, but the importance of them is not only AR offense, but specifically AR defense. AR defense is very important dual hindrance because you're going to run into this stuff, and denying the dual ability is very important. I think at this point that I would recommend at least getting a single Duo or Harmonized hero, and it doesn't matter what it is, and trying to slot it into your defense in both seasons. Because these heroes have now they've come a long way to the point where you should use them, at least a single copy of them on defense. I have Harmonized Mia, for example, and I use her on defense now. And the dual hindrance has been basically very important for winning a lot of matches. Like I see NY Alphonse, and denying his dual ability is huge for denying his power. A lot of the other ones work the same way, like Lynn, if you kind of can stop her from using her dual ability, at least through the dual's hindrance building, like that's huge, and can definitely take away some play options. The same can be applied for dual Peony now, who basically has like a free dance, a set of 2 dances in 1 unit kind of a unit. So this is all very important to consider, and dual's hindrance, I'd say, is a staple now, so picking up one of these is very good. Now I'm going to actually talk about why some of these are where they are. Like, for example, why is dual Peony and dual Sigurd at the top, and then you have, like, I don't know, dual Ephraim or dual Hector at the bottom? Probably to no one's surprise, dual Hector and dual Athun are situational utility dual heroes. For example, Hector is really good at maybe creating some snipe vantage plays, really good synergy with like Kronia, for instance. Dual Athun could act as a carry or potentially make dragons or armors, I believe, immune to those effective damage, and that could be really good as support or utility. So that's basically why they're lower ranked, because they're not as easy to fit into most teams. They can be useful, but they're in more situational aspects, and everything in the bronze category basically applies to this. Silver just being a little bit better, like Brave Makai can slot into a lot more teams with her dual skill. NY Alphonse, again, same idea, and Tiki has like a somewhat of a dance effect, so that's kind of good. But you know what's better than somewhat of a dance effect is literally just having a dancer, which is what Duo Sigurd and Duo Peony do. Both of them I consider very strong because they're just dancers, but with added utility, and that's always good to have. So that's why they're ranked at the top, because you can fit them into most teams. Now, the carries are a different topic altogether. I don't really want to rank them necessarily, because a lot of them might be really good now, but definitely might not actually be that good later. That's very important to consider. Units fall into and out of the meta very easily, so it's not like I can just list Christmas Altina as being the best right now, even if she might be, because I could see in maybe a few months they're coming out with hard counters to whatever, you know, her playstyle might be. So a lot of the carries kind of fall under this category. There's going to be counterplay new skills that kind of stop them from doing what they're best at doing, which is carrying your match, and they don't have that much support utility, which is what the carries fall under. They could literally be the worst or the best units in the game, depending on what the meta is, while everyone else kind of provides some sort of utility and could fit into some compositions. Think of that list as being that way. I think there's definitely utility in putting these dual heroes into some air offense compositions. I think the heroes themselves, if you plant a plus 10 one, could be very useful for arena as well for your scoring. They're very strong there, give you added score and extra abilities to make arena much easier. Very hefty orb cost though. And finally, Resonant Battles for Harmonized Heroes. Wouldn't recommend, because honestly, just not having one, you kind of bounce between tiers anyways, and the reward gaps are very minimal. This has been discussed in my Discord on Twitch many times, so you can feel free to come along. But basically, Harmonized Heroes are not worth it if you're playing them for Resonant Battles. And Aether Raids, definitely consider a one-off or not. I want to jump into builds as well, so we're not just strictly talking about that, but essentially why something like Peony could be really good. And this is more of a defense build because, again, Duel's Hindrance is very important here. I just literally put aerobatics, ground orders, and flyer formation on there, and obviously that might not be ideal, but the point is a flyer mobility, for her having flyer mobility and being able to give the other units on your team that mobility through ground orders or air orders or whatever is very strong, and that's why Duo Peony would probably be one of the best defensive duo heroes, because it's a dancer with the ability to put a duel's hindrance on your defense team. So Duo Peony for sure, probably to no one's surprise. The ARD list is pretty similar to the ARO list, although I've added an even worse tier here, and there's no carries on defense necessarily. You pretty much don't want to use Halloween Hector or Duo Uthune on any defense teams unless you're running some weird armor teams, which don't really work right now. They can, but I don't really see them. And obviously, some carries themselves aren't really going to fit. Christmas Altina could potentially checkmate, but I don't feel like she has that much of a role on defense as she would have on offense, for example. She has much easier counterplay when people play into her than you trying to get your AI to beat her, so that's why. Someone like Mia, on the other hand, has a great weapon for AR defense, has some great builds, and has range mobility, range cab mobility to basically pressure opponents really well for defense. So yeah, and stuff like Lyn and Byleth could make good nukes and have the flyer mobility. Veronica can be really annoying. So defense and offense, pretty similar. That's why you want to kind of think about who you might want to pick up as a one-off between these two, of course, between these two different air offense and defense. If you're having trouble on offense, maybe consider a stronger air offense duel or Harmonized Heroes. If you're having more trouble on defense, then definitely think about Peony, Sigurd, or Mia, for instance, who's very strong in that regard. I don't dismiss stuff like Lyn and Byleth being very powerful in defense, Bricky as well, Brave, Bridal Micaiah, being able to have that effective against Cav and armor is very strong. NY Alphonse highly merge, becomes very bulky. Potent nuke as well. So I definitely want to mention those. And remember, this is just my opinion. So, you can make anything good here, but realistically, I feel like some are better and easier to use than others are without the right setups. On that note, and I feel a lot of people might forget this, but Harmonized Abilities, and this is different between Harmonized and Duos, is Harmonized Abilities only work with those in game, and this is even a further restriction for Christmas Altina, who her ability Vantage only works on herself. So keep that in mind, games have to be within matching. So if you use, for example, Harmonized Mia on offense, you basically need to use Radiant Dawn or Awakening units to benefit from her Harmonized ability, which isn't really that much, it's just some attack and speed on offense. Could be good, but realistically, not a huge impact. Okay, so I want to talk on Sigurd as well, who I basically I haven't ran this build personally, but we have theory crafted it in my Discord as well, and it's a very strong build because if you think about it carefully, Anima or Dark, I think it's been tested both and works. For example, Dual Sigurd is a 3-move dancer that's huge without the restrictions of herons and transformations. But what this does is, with physical threats, using ARD speed res, which is budget, phantom speed, you get 20 speed and a plus speed IV, which you could change with fruits, gives him basically 42 speed at an unmerge, just 5 flower setup, speed ploy with this high res to activate, and create that speed gap. Lets him actually deal with a lot of physical threats that aren't running Null Sea Disrupt. For example, Altina on Anima or Astro Season would usually kill someone like Dual Sigurd, if you were to bait him, because he actually has a high attack stat, but because of Wind Sweep, you actually keep him alive, potentially do some damage, and create pressure for the following turns. Now, the thing that even makes this better is that Guilt Goblet for magical threats, except dragons, who are pretty good, reduces damage on magic by 50%. So he's actually deceptively effective with a build like this because he covers the physical and the magical side pretty well. Now, alternatively, you could use stuff like Keen Roarwolf to beat out like Freya. You could potentially win the Wind Sweep check against Freya if you had like a Cav school on your team. So there's some really nice synergy with a build like this. You don't have to build him like this. You could use Roarfox, you could use Wings of Mercy, you could keep him in the back line. There's a lot of flexibility, but this is why a unit like Dual Sigurd could be a good candidate, potentially pick up later if he shows up on double specials or during his rerun to make your defense a lot better. Remember, the key thing here is that all of these Duo and Harmonized Heroes allow you to use Duo's hindrance on defense, so even if they're literally useless on your defense, in the case of like Duo Hector, at least you got that building to deny your opponents from being able to use their own Duo heroes. And a lot of things that aren't considered is like a Duo Lin. Like, the player who plays into you might have a Dual Lin, but chooses to not even use that team because you have a Dual's hindrance building. So, in some aspect, it might be getting value without you even realizing it because the player chose a different team that you may not have even seen. Very important to consider that at all, really. So, realistically, think right now, if you don't already use a Duo hero, Harmonized hero on defense, how you can start slotting them in, even if it's like the worst ones. Even if it's the worst ones, you can get a lot of value out of the way. So I did talk about like defense from those two. You could definitely use them on offense pretty successfully, but someone like a carry here with Lin being at low merges ends up being pretty strong. So if you don't know what Air Force is, it's basically like air taking Fury chip damage and setting up Wings of Mercy with Peony or different Gale Force units to basically sweep the team. Now, Lin can kind of do the same thing at actually low merges with a minus HP IV. You might want like Pumpkin a Box from Dozla if you get some merges or the wrong IV. But essentially, you could, if someone you play into doesn't have the Dual's hindrance building and you have like Plumeria or another dancer with Lin, you can basically just sweep the whole team with Lin because you can run Wings of Mercy on even stuff like Altina or Naga and Astra or Regan and just completely sweep a full team just by using Dual Lin and her chip damage from Fury in this case with their very high offensive stat spread and her dual ability. So the potent nature of a unit like this is crazy and why it demands Dual's hindrance as a building at all on defense. So with that being said, guys, there's not really much more I'm going to add to this. Of course, I'm sure a lot of discussion has already happened on Christmas Altina, and why I do want to mention that both Altina and Lin are susceptible to meta changes is because if people start adding Dual's hindrance, these units can become less effective. They come up with new units, new abilities that also kind of deny the ability for these units to make those carry plays. Makes it kind of questionable as investments for AR offense, but definitely for AR defense. Even something like Halloween Hector, which I would consider very bad on defense, could still get you some value without you even realizing it, and maybe consider how you could use those characters on defense. So that being said, guys, Final build, Christmas Altina. I don't really need to discuss that. You already know what Altina is, but now she's on the floor and even more powerful because she can use infantry abilities and gets benefited from blessings in her duo skill, which gives her vantage. So, you know, I don't really need to explain this. Most people should know what that basically is doing. And with that being said, guys, look out for future Duo and Harmonized Heroes if you're not already invested in them in some way, and think about slotting them into defense on both seasons. The most recent Vault to Heavens change allowed us 3 defense blessings per season, so you have some flexibility to throw even a single Duo Harmonized Hero between seasons just to adapt to the meta if you need to. Thank you guys for watching. The next video should actually be a kind of like a news Vault to Heavens opinion video that I'm going to be covering very soon. So look out for that. And thanks for watching, guys. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Much love, guys. Check out the Twitch and Discord for further discussions. See you in the next one.